You're watching Throttle House. I'm Thomas.
And I'm Sergio.
Does this drive exactly like a Formula One car?
Oh yeah.
Exactly. That's what I thought.
When I do a first drive on a car, I'm thorough. So I made sure that since James couldn't come down to Texas, I did extra research. It was hard. I had to watch an F1 race. I had the grueling task of sitting right seat to the Mexican Minister of Defense himself. And I had a back and forth with a guy who'd driven the Type R before me. It was hard work, but I do this for you guys.
And also because the new Civic Type R is important. Given that it takes extreme focus to capture it, and given the fact that Honda invited only two of us, Karsten, Throttle House's head of focus, joined Thomas on the journey to Austin. I'm not bitter, I swear. In fact, I'm happy for them, and I'm happy that the Type R is finally here, because we were just in the GR Corolla and the new Golf R, and they're pretty great. And this new FL5 generation Type R, for the next while, is the last piece of the manual hot hatch puzzle. And we will get it on our home track soon enough, but today Thomas tries the Civic Type R for the first time on its own. It's a big name, and for 2023, it's asking big money. In the US, it starts with a 4 before it now, and in Canada, a 5. Its looks may have changed, but for that price, it's still better drive to survive. Mic drop.
James, you don't say mic drop.
Mic drop! And if you're new to Throttle House, we do car reviews, track tests, and quite a lot of messing about. So subscribe, hit the bell.
So, here it is, the new Honda Civic Type R. And since the last one drove beautifully, all they had to do was make it not look like the underside of a horseshoe crab. And it doesn't. It's simple, it's clean. And actually, I'd say that it's probably styled perfectly, except for the fact that I can't seem to shake the idea that it just looks like an Accord Type R. It's a bit long. Okay, it might have a little bit more in the length department, but it also has a little bit more in the engine department. It's pretty much the same engine as last year, but it's been tweaked, so now it makes 315 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. Does it feel faster? Maybe marginally, but since I'm in plus R mode, it's definitely noisier. But maybe not in a good way. There's a lot of this like fake noise just being pumped into my face over here in plus R mode, which I don't love. Now the exhaust has been tweaked. Everyone complained that the Type R was too quiet, and it was. So now the middle pipe on the exhaust actually lets more noise go through. And I can tell you, can confirm, I don't think it's any louder from the outside. Maybe a little bit. Okay, the thing about the Type R for me is that it's always been a car that teaches you that you don't need all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive to have a fast car and to have fun. And this one is exactly like that. They've absolutely nailed the way that this drives as a front-wheel drive car. And I will say that right now I got the traction control and stability control fully off in plus R mode, and you know what, the car is rotating more. It reminds me of a Veloster N actually. If you trail the throttle in or lift in the middle of a corner, you actually get nice rotation out of it. Look at that. The front end goes exactly where you point it. This is on Cup 2s, this particular spec. And very importantly, there's no longer a 20-inch wheel, because the ride was way too harsh with a 20-inch. And this is still really harsh because I'm in Plus R mode, and the suspension, I tried it in comfort, but it wouldn't let me turn the traction control all the way off when I had it in individual. I hope that's not actually the case. I just couldn't figure it out. But yeah, you can really sling this thing through the corners, and it just rotates wonderfully. Look at that. And then it's got that diff up front, so you plant your foot on the way out. It's great. Engine still pulls hard, and it's got, I know it's not a VTEC engine, it's got VTEC on the exhaust cam, but it still has that kind of like fizzy, likes to be near the limiter feel to it, which is what a Honda should be about. So it's fun. The transmission has been improved, it's been beefed up a little bit. And you know what, I haven't grinded second gear yet, so that's a good thing. Gears are going in nicely. Shifter feels great. Steering. Okay, so this is a difficult one because the steering in the previous Type R was pretty great. And apparently they've done some steering upgrades. But if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't know if it's the tires, the temperature. I think I like the steering in the previous one a little bit better. The steering is very linear in the way that it builds weight, but you know what? It's good. It's still good. It's as good as the GR Corolla steering, that's for sure. The Type R was always quite serious. Dare I say that this one is a little bit more playful. As I said, all they had to do was not screw up the way that it drives, and they didn't. I do wish that engine note would shut up, though. I will say that.
Okay, so the piped-in engine sound in Plus R mode is a bit much. A hot hatch can still be a hot hatch without that, and this still is. The larger grille and bigger radiator meant that no one saw overheating issues. The car took a beating all day. I even checked with Checo himself if the car was holding up.
How are the brakes feeling?
We're not braking that much, though.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
He's right, we weren't. We were using the tires though. These test cars had Michelin Cup 2 tires, which is a dealer-installed option, but it normally comes on PS4Ss. Speaking of normal...
Okay, styling. Now this is important because the last Type R was controversial, and the controversial things have been removed. First of all, there's no fake vents. This is real. That's real to release pressure from under the hood. All this is functional aero. It's a very clean design, but it is very different to the base Civic. Every single panel in this car is different to the base Civic except for this door, and therefore the other door, obviously. But I actually really like it, you know? My only issue with it is that, as I said earlier, it just looks like an Accord to me. It's just like a sedan with a wing stuck on it. Like this, right here, for me, just looks like something you'd buy at Part Source and you'd stick on the back of your base Civic. It is functional, obviously, as long with all the other stuff. It is longer, lower, and wider than the normal Civic, and overall, I think it's a very handsome looking vehicle. And it's in Max Verstappen white. Let's look at the interior. Okay. Ooh, a nice song. So, all the things that I loved about the old Type R are still present in here, namely the seats. I don't know why or how, but Honda just figured out how to make the perfect sport bucket. They're comfortable, they're supportive, they hold you in, and all they did with this was improve them. In fact, they know how good they are because there's a whole slide in the presentation about the seats and how they tweaked them to make sure they still had that support and comfort, but were still obviously Type R seats, and they're red along with the carpets. Now this one doesn't have the package that upgrades the shifter to Alcantara, the steering wheel to Alcantara, and the wheels outside to the special forged wheels. This is just a normal leather steering wheel. The Alcantara is pretty cool, I will say that, but this is probably a little bit more usable. Otherwise, this is very much just a normal Civic in here, with the exception of the fact that it says Type R on that little badge right here, and when you put it in Plus R mode, it gives you a really cool gauge cluster, and there's shift lights. Although those shift lights, we in Canada get on the Civic Si, which is pretty neat. Driving position is good. Lots of headroom in the front and the back, actually, and knee room when I'm sitting in my own driving position. Honestly, this is just a really solid cabin. I don't really have any serious critiques about it, right? There's a volume knob, there's knobs for the climate control. It's just a Civic with red carpets and red seats. That's all it had to be. I like it.
I like it because it managed to just continue being a Type R, a car that I already really liked. More testing is definitely necessary, and as James said, we'll get it on our home track and on a public road soon, because these days it has some very serious, similarly priced rivals. Thanks for watching.
Hey Max, did you manage to meet that guy from Throttle House? Oh yeah, that was cool. Thomas, right? Yeah, he was cool, man, but I kind of hoped it was going to be James. Isn't he like the handsome, charming, funny one? Yeah, that's what they say, but I think he was just spending a normal weekend in Toronto, just, not being at Formula One in Austin and having a great time. Well, he has no reason to really be jealous because technically we live on his fingers, so we get to see him whenever we want. Oh, Max, you're so smart. In fact, the only person who's smarter than you is probably James. No!